Ugly Show. We have been expecting you. For tonight, we will count down our top 10 favourite Hammer horror films. Okay, so it's about time we did this, a top 10 Hammer horror film video. Okay, so right off the bat, this is a Hammer horror top 10, so not just a Hammer film top 10. So we have to understand that there were a lot of different sort of Hammer films made. The company produced crime drama, thriller, swashbuckling, action-adventure, and even comedy. So, yeah, quite a lot of films under their belt, really. So the company known as Hammer started off as exclusive films, founded in 1934 by William Hines, also known as William Hammer. So he was a comedian and a businessman who decided to start his own film company up. The first film they ever put out was 1935's The Public Life of Henry IX. And then there was The Mystery of the Mary Celeste, which is kind of like the first sort of Hammer film. It's quite kind of, it's got some of the atmosphere. That's quite a good film. That was also from that year. And then 1936 saw a film called The Song of Freedom. So yeah, that's kind of where they began with. So what we'll do now is we'll crack straight on with the top 10. And number 10 is Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde.
This is the Testament of Dr. Henry Jekyll, male, male, male.
So that was directed in 1971 by Roy Ward Baker, and it was Hammer's third adaptation of the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde story. The Ugly Duckling was another attempt, so this was the third attempt, and yeah, third time lucky, I guess. I don't know if it's better than the other two or not, really, but it does some interesting stuff. It moves slightly out of the original story and puts a little twist on it. It went in directions other films didn't really dare to step foot in. But yeah, it's a very good film. I really enjoy it. Starring Ralph Bates and Martine Beswick, if I've said those names right. If I haven't. Another interesting point about this film is it incorporates aspects of Jack the Ripper and Burke and Hare into the storyline. Sort of legends of oldie London, as you know. What else to say about the film? It doesn't take itself too seriously. There's a slight comedic tone. No, I like this. This definitely should be in the top 10. At number 10 is a good place for it, I think. I guess we'll move on. So, coming in at number 9, it is, of course, The Brides of Dracula.
Ah, there she is. Ah, she comes. There's my little beauty. Ah, the clever one.
So The Brides of Dracula, released in 1960, directed by Terence Fisher and starring Peter Cushing, David Peel, Vivian Monlaw and Freda Jackson. So yeah, it was released as a double bill with The Leech Woman. It has a lot of atmosphere about it. I recently rewatched this film with my dad, who pointed out that this has a real good look about it. Like the sets and everything, it looks perfect as a Hammer horror Dracula film. I guess the production was far from perfect, really. I think they wanted to make a sequel to Dracula, and they planned to have Christopher Lee turn up only briefly in it, so cameos of the original Dracula, and to move the story along slightly. I believe Christopher Lee wasn't willing to do that. Either I guess he was all in or all out. I guess he didn't do cameos in those days. Also, I don't think he was very happy with the Dracula films anyway. He didn't really like the character so much or really enjoy playing him, and he felt he'd be typecast, which of course he was, because he is forever Dracula, really, however you look at it. You know, when you see Christopher Lee, I kind of think of Dracula, and that's most of the world, I think. There's really no way of avoiding it. But also, him and Peter Cushing made a brilliant double team, really, of Van Helsing and Dracula. So Peter Cushing is in this film. He turns up as Van Helsing. Van Helsing isn't in all of the Dracula sequels. He's in a handful, at least. Quite a few, but not all of them. This features also a slight touch of the M.R. James Count Magnus, where the locks fall from the coffin, which is kind of a cool touch to put in there. So it takes a little bit from that as well. I think it's a good film. I didn't really like it growing up, this one, because obviously there's no Dracula in it. It's a Dracula film with no Dracula. But I really like it, and as I say, the look and feel of it. It has that Hammer atmosphere. It's pretty damn good. So next, we'll move on to number 8. And this time, we're going slightly into the sci-fi territory with X the Unknown from 1956. So as I say, we're staying away from the films that aren't really horror, but I feel this one's definitely got more of the horror touch to it. Directed by Leslie Norman, starring Dean Jagger and Edward Chapman. This kind of established the Hammer film from the B-movie territory into horror sci-fi. And of course we have the Quatermass films as well. We must now obviously talk a little bit about Quatermass, Quatermass 2 and Quatermass in the Pit. And I believe there was another one, I don't know, there's a lot of them to be honest. The Quatermass films were a lot of fun, and this definitely falls into the kind of vein of all that. In fact, I believe the original idea was to have this as one of the Quatermass films, but they changed their mind last minute, or something went down, and that didn't happen. But yeah, it's very similar in tone to that. I guess this film kind of feeds off of Cold War anxieties of the time, and the threat of the atomic bomb and nuclear radiation and all that kind of stuff. It kind of all centers from a Y-shaped crack that appears, eventually leading up to a big blob of radiation. I'll say no more about it in case you haven't seen it yet. But yeah, definitely worth checking out. If you haven't seen this one, go and watch it. It's probably a slightly lesser known Hammer film, I suppose, and it slightly takes us out of the just pure horror for this list. But yeah, X the Unknown. And now at number 7. That's right, we have Dracula from 1958. Directed by Terence Fisher and starring Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, Michael Gough, and Melissa Stribling, or Stribling, however the hell you want to pronounce that. And of course in the US it was known as Horror of Dracula, so you might be a bit confused there. So yeah, so this is the beginning of the Dracula films by Hammer, which there were many of. I really enjoy all of them actually. They got a bit sillier near the end, I suppose. They kind of, with films like Dracula AD 72, which is very interesting, and kind of reeled back in with the final instalment, Satanic Rites of Dracula, which is actually very, very good, I think, anyway. Back to the list, we have Dracula, of course. So, yeah, this is great. A very fun film. Not exactly completely true to the book, of course, because there aren't really any versions out there of Dracula which are particularly true to the book. They always make changes, bring in characters, put characters in different places, kind of make it easier to slimline the story, I guess. There are a couple. There was the 70s BBC production, which is actually quite close to the story, and obviously you have many Dracula films. I'm not going to get into the whole which is the best Dracula film, because that's another video for another time. If I could ever be bothered to make that, I don't know if I ever could, to be honest. There's a lot of work right there. I'm currently rereading Dracula as well. I read Dracula as a child, and now I'm reading it again because, you know, apparently I'm an adult now. So I'm really enjoying it. It's a very, very good book anyway, but I can see how you would have to kind of do something with it and slimline it down maybe. They got rid of the character of Renfield in this particular version, and they also dropped the character of Quincy Morris as well. I can see why they would do that, I guess. It's easy just to have Jonathan Harker and to have a few other people just put in there, slim it all down a little bit. It makes sense. Also, Christopher Lee isn't really going out of his way to do the whole kind of Eastern European thing in this. He's not putting on any accents. He's not doing a Bela Lugosi. He's a very straightforward, quite posh British man, really.
I am Dracula, and I welcome you to my house. I must apologize for not being here to greet you personally, but I trust that you have found everything you needed.
Maybe he had more fun making this particular film. I don't know. He didn't come back for the sequel, though, as we say. But then he did come back for all the rest of them. So it's hard to say. I don't know. But yeah, it's a very good starting point for the Dracula films anyway. It's also a very good Hammer film, dripping with atmosphere as well, and a great performance from everybody in it. But yeah, it's a very good film. It has to be on the list just because of what it is, I guess. Coming in at number 6. Of course, we have Curse of the Werewolf. Directed by Terence Fisher and starring Oliver Reed, Clifford Evans and Vivian Romaine. This is based on the book The Werewolf of Paris. Also, this is the first werewolf film to be filmed in colour. Your very first colour werewolf. Also, I can't decide whether to say werewolf or werewolf. So yeah, I love this film. This film is brilliant. It starts off with the banquet of a horrible Marquis, I don't know how to say it, Marquis, played by Anthony Dawson. So it's an earlier Oliver Reed film, I guess helping to propel him into stardom as he became a huge successful actor later on. And Oliver Reed was fantastic in this film as well. I love the sequence at the beginning. Apparently he was having to wear these contacts and the tears running down his face were real because he wasn't allowed to close his eyes. They filmed that in real time. Agonisingly painful, apparently. Yeah, and I think the film's really good. I don't know what to say about it. It's a great classic Hammer horror film, really. And a very important film, I think, on this list that you definitely need to go and watch if you haven't seen it before. If not, then, it's a well-celebrated thing. So yeah, it's another one that I grew up watching as well, and just fantastic. I won't say too much about the plot and story and stuff because you've either seen it or you haven't. If you haven't, I don't want to give too much away. Coming in at number 5. We have The Hound of the Baskervilles.
And so the curse of Sir Hugo came upon the Baskervilles in the shape of a hound from hell, forever to bring misfortune to the Baskerville family.
That's right, from 1959, directed by Terence Fisher, starring Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, and Andre Morel. He's another Hammer actor that I do love watching in films. So, taken from the novel by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and this is the first film adaptation of that story, with an amazing soundtrack by James Bernard, again, of course. And apparently Peter Cushing was a Sherlock Holmes aficionado, so he was really into this and gave a lot of help with the production making this as well, which probably was what made it such a great film. And then Peter Cushing went on to later on appear in the TV series of the Sherlock Holmes, playing Sherlock Holmes again and again and again. Obviously really enjoying that role. This film is another great Hammer film, again packed with atmosphere, oozing in atmosphere. Again, I'll keep saying that throughout the video, and I'll keep doing this because I like the way it looks. Just me Dracula cape. But yeah, I mean, what to say? It's Hound of the Baskervilles. I mean, you've either read the book or you haven't. If you haven't, go and read the book. Obviously, if you haven't seen the film, go and watch the film. I'm not going to say too much more about it. It's a great Hammer film, one of the best. Fantastic. And now, number 4. It is, of course, Curse of Frankenstein.
More than 100 years ago, in a mountain village in Switzerland, lived a man whose strange experiments with the dead have since become a legend. A legend that is still told with horror the world over.
That's right, from 1957, directed by Terence Fisher, starring Peter Cushing, Hazel Court, and Christopher Lee. So this was the first Hammer film to be shot in colour. So that would have amazed and stunned audiences, I think, when they saw that. And of course, this came just before Dracula, so they started off with the Frankenstein, then Dracula, then the Mummy. They did all the same ones that Universal did decades before. So I think they had to try quite hard with this one not to copy Universal, so they couldn't use the Frankenstein with the square head and the kind of, the Boris Karloff Frankenstein image. So they went with something a bit different. And for that reason, as a kid, I really didn't like it, because I didn't recognise the monster as being Frankenstein's monster, because I think I was just used to Boris Karloff. So that kind of ruined it for me as a kid. I really appreciate it now, because you shouldn't be copying another film's work if you're adapting a novel. You should be making it your own thing and bringing in your own ideas. That's the whole bloody point, right? So, yeah, Frankenstein shouldn't look like that, because that was just their version of it. So Christopher Lee plays the part actually very well, and he looks horrific in this film. Also, this was cited by many as being the first real gory horror film as well. So lots of blood and horror in this, which is great. And also, as a side note, going back to our Carry On video, apparently Bernard Bresslaw was considered to play the monster first of all because of his giant stature. But Christopher Lee's a pretty tall bloke anyway, so yeah. This, of course, started its own horror series off with the Hammer Frankenstein films. There were many again. So a little bit like the Dracula films, they started off as sequels, with the character would run away, change his name, and carry on as they kind of go on. The monster be brought back and all that stuff. And then eventually they just kind of grow bored of doing that, so they start to, or they can't get the actors back, so they start kind of mucking around with it and rebooting it. And the same thing happened with the Dracula series. It carried on, then it got to a point where they just kind of brought it back to the beginning, which I didn't like. And then took it to the end, took it into the 1970s and 80s again, I don't know. But the Frankenstein films suffer a kind of similar problem. Also, different people playing the monster. So you had David Prowse stepped in at one point. I think for the last couple of films, David Prowse. I think someone else might have done it as well. I can't remember rightly. One of my favourites in the series is the one that everybody hates, where Frankenstein is young, kind of at school, and it's got a kind of comedy feel to it. And the monster ends up... Actually, I won't tell you the ending, but it's quite a funny ending, actually. I quite enjoyed that one. But anyway, people hated that. Most people. But so it begins here, and I think this is a solid film, really, in the Frankenstein Hammer horror series. Yeah. Number 3. Okay, so we're going to get into some Satanic Panic here with The Devil Rides Out. From 1968, directed by Terence Fisher, starring Christopher Lee and Charles Gray, adapted from the 1934 novel by Dennis Wheatley. This was a great film. Dennis Wheatley did a lot of these books. He's kind of like the horror kind of Ian Fleming, really. His characters are usually a bit kind of brash, and they drive around in cool cars and look good and fight and stuff. It's that kind of thing, really. I love this film. It's great. It's a lot of fun, actually. Christopher Lee gives a brilliant performance in this as well. Christopher Lee enjoyed this one so much that he wanted to remake it years later, playing an slightly older version of the character. That very almost got into production, apparently. It didn't happen in the end, but that would have been quite cool, right? Maybe in the 90s or 80s. Who knows? But also, Dennis Wheatley really enjoyed it as well. In fact, he liked the film so much that he gifted Christopher Lee a first edition copy of the book, which is a brilliant thing to be given, right? That's cool, man. But yeah, another great entry in the into the Hammer film series, of course. So now we get to number 2. Now, of course, number 2 for me could only be The Plague of the Zombies. So from 1966, directed by John Gilling and starring Andre Morell, John Carson, Jacqueline Pearl and Brooke Williams. So this film, I think people might be screaming and tearing their hair out, because this obviously isn't one of the greatest Hammer films in terms of amazing film quality. I don't know quite how to put this. It's not a film that's going to particularly win any awards for an amazing film, but for me it is absolutely great. It has all the amazing atmosphere of the Hammer film, and also it's basically the first zombie film, and I'm a man who loves zombie films, especially the older ones, the original ones. So I think, Night of the Living Dead gets cited as being the original zombie film because it has these zombies returning from the grave and eating people. It's not voodoo, it's nothing else, it's just a horrible kind of like pandemic, really, which kind of started off the zombie films as we know them. Whereas this film has more of a voodoo aspect to it, but it does have the zombies rising out of the ground and they're rotting and they're all grey and dead. And I think that's such a fucking cool image. It's just fantastic. That's why it has to be number 2, and it's a film I've loved for a long time. This was shot back to back with the Reptile, which is also another iconic Hammer monster, and made on quite a low budget. So I think if they made a couple of films together, they could use the same sets and backgrounds and costumes and all that kind of stuff. I think that was the idea, really, to do it on the cheap. But as cheap as this film was made, I think it's just fantastic. This could be my number 1, but for a particular reason it is not. And I want to take a moment to talk about a fantastic Hammer horror cast member, of course, Michael Ripper. So yeah, he's in this film as the policeman. He's in like a lot of these films, playing either kind of policeman gravediggers or whatever. He plays that kind of role. He was fantastic. I love him. He turns up here and there. He's like the Peter Butterworth of the Hammer films, I think, if I can say that. So number one for me is the almost stereotypical Hammer film. It has all of the kind of calling cards, the sets, the atmosphere, and all that stuff in it. It was also put out as a double bill with this film. So of course, coming to number one, it can only be Dracula, Prince of Darkness. Shot in 1966, directed by Terence Fisher, starring Christopher Lee, Barbara Shelley and Andrew Keir. This is not an amazing film by standards of being superbly made and making a huge impact on cultural society or whatever, but it's a great Hammer film, and it has some brilliant moments in it. Parodied quite strongly at the time by the Carry On team of Carry On Screaming.
Isn't your master joining us for dinner?
No, sir. I'm afraid not.
Is he indisposed?
He's dead. My master is dead. But instructions were left that the castle should always be ready to receive guests.
I absolutely love this film. It's got all the right kind of characters and the right creepiness and the right sets, the right kind of look about it. Also, Christopher Lee didn't speak in it, so Dracula just kind of grunts and hisses in this film. And apparently that's because Christopher Lee took a look at the script and said, if you think I'm reading out this shit, you've got another thing coming. So apparently, yeah, he just refused to, and he said, right, well, I'll be in it, but I'm just going to make noises. I'm not going to bother reading the script. Which I don't know if that's true or not. It might well be true. Who knows? But in any case, it just makes it kind of better in a way, because it kind of makes it sillier, and I love that. But you've got Christopher Lee's red eyes and the nasty bloody fangs and all that. It's a great film. I mean, come on, Dracula Prince of Darkness. It's an iconic poster. It's an iconic film. You know, if you're going to put something at the top, why not this, I guess? I know I'm going to get some stick for this, probably, but I just think it's great. It's a lot of fun. It's Hammer as we know them best, I suppose. Or as we came to know them best. So now, that was the top 10. So we're going to do a little bit of talking about the other films that they made. Of course, I do have a list here of notable films I picked out for this that I need to mention anyway. Obviously, one of them being the Quatermass films. Yeah, I mean, they're not in the top 10 list for me, and that's only because it's my choice. It's not because I'm making the ultimate best of list. At least one of those films will probably be in it. This is my choice, my ideas, my history of growing up, my childhood growing up with Hammer horror. So the Quatermass films, I didn't really bother watching them until a bit later anyway. I saw Quatermass 2 for the first time recently and very much enjoyed that. You know, it's as I say, didn't grow up with them, so that's the difference for me. But they're a lot of fun, and I can see why they would be in someone else's list, you know, top 10 list. I get it. So next we move on to 1960s Never Take Sweets from a Stranger. So this film is horrible, man. This is really hard to watch. It deals with some heavy themes, it's got to be said. It's a very good, it's a classic early Hammer kind of drama film, really. Drama thriller, you know, it's kind of yeah, it's definitely worth mentioning. Notable, I think. Notable. And next we go on to 1961's Cash on Demand. Andre Morel, I believe was in this one again. I don't know. As I say, I've only seen it once. This is a great film. It's a kind of like a sort of bank heist film, but more of a shut-in kind of one-room type film, really. It kind of went on to become a bit of a trend. I think this kind of is a bit of a trendsetter for its day. It kind of mainly takes place in one room and builds up a lot of tension throughout, which is a great thing. It's also not a horror film. It's not really a thriller either. It's kind of a crime drama, I guess. Again, a great film though. Another brilliant film to check out if you're not familiar with it. Because I mean, a few of these films on this list you might not be familiar with. Worth checking out. And next we'll go to 1962 with The Pirates of Blood River. Now, this was Hammer's swashbuckling action-adventure line, basically. There were a few of these pirates films they did. Yeah, I guess they kind of set out to make films a bit like this. You know, Disney were doing this kind of thing as well at the time. They make it like Treasure Island and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, you know, it's fun. It's kind of family fun, really. But I guess pretty gruesome in places. Just not your standard horror that you are usually signing up to with a Hammer film. Fun, nevertheless, anyway. And now we'll go to 1965's The Nanny. So, this film, God, me and my brother stayed up late as children and watched this film in all its black and white glory on an old television set in our auntie's attic. We weren't locked up there, we were just staying over. It was an attic room, you know. Yeah, starring Bette Davis. This is a really quite horrible, again, quite a grim film, really. Deals with a horrible concept again of the death of a child and all that kind of thing, which, as a parent, these films become more and more difficult to watch, you know, for obvious reasons. Yeah, and The Nanny gives me fucking anxiety about being a parent as well, because you got to watch the film to find out exactly why. But yeah, it's just a tragedy of a film, really. I don't mean it's terrible. I mean the film has a tragedy in it. But yeah, it's another great performance by Bette Davis during the era of when she was starting to do kind of horror movies, or doing movies of a darker nature. She really was very good at that. Yeah, and this film is no exception in that point. A fantastic film. The Nanny is one of my favourite Hammer films, I think. I haven't watched it for years, but I'm a bit scared to watch it, I think, now, because I'm a parent and it will freak me out. So, yeah. And that will lead us on to another Bette Davis film by Hammer from 1968, The Anniversary. In this one, she plays a horrible, controlling mum of a large family, and it's basically one of them brings their girlfriend home to meet mum, and it all goes, shit hits the fan, you know? This is a very dysfunctional family. Yeah, I love this film. It's almost comical in a way, because it's just so horrible, and she's such a piece of work that it's quite fun to watch this. As I say, another fantastic performance from Bette Davis again as well. She was good at this kind of role. You know, whatever happened to Baby Jane and all that, it's kind of going off the cusp of that, I guess, really. Yeah, check it out. And now we'll move on to 1966, Rasputin, the Mad Monk. Of course, he wasn't a mad monk, was he, really? But we know that now. Yeah, Christopher Lee playing Rasputin. Very, very good job. I really enjoyed that film. It's just great fun. He plays him as, you know, he's such an asshole, isn't he? The character in this film of Rasputin. But yeah, that's a great film. It's a lot of fun to watch. It's probably not amazingly close to the old Rasputin story. Close enough, I guess. Christopher Lee puts on a good performance. It's Rasputin, you know. Good stuff. And of course, now we have the, as mentioned earlier on, 1966, The Reptile. Only really because of the iconic look of the reptile creature himself. It's become a kind of horror icon, I think. And now we move on to a slightly weirder one, 1966, The Witches. So we're going into the kind of realms of folk horror here. This one has a sort of similarity to stuff like The Wicker Man and that kind of thing. A lot of paranoia, and the whole kind of village is in on it, and I love those kind of films. It's just fantastic. A lot of fun. This film I really enjoyed. The Witches, if you haven't seen it, obviously there are many films called The Witches, including the Roald Dahl one that's also been remade recently. A lot of Witches films out there. If you find the Hammer one though, go and check that out, because I guess that probably gets overlooked slightly and swept to the side. I don't know, but as I say, a classic piece of folk horror. So yeah, it's a good one. And we must talk very briefly about the 1 million years BC and all the kind of dinosaur caveman films. There were a few of them. And Amicus, also rivals to Hammer, made a few of these films as well. The Land That People Forgot and that kind of thing. I don't know, they're bloody ridiculous films, really. Made before we really understood a lot about dinosaurs and cavemen, and people did not live alongside dinosaurs or use them as waste disposal units. So, yeah, the film looks a bit ridiculous now, but I guess it's a lot of fun, really. You know, it is what it is. A bit of Stone Age family fun, you know, watch it with the Flintstones or something. And of course, we should end the video just having a little bit of a talk about the other films they made, the comedy films. That's right. So Hammer, for some reason, got contracts to turn British sitcoms into films, which was a bit of a strange idea. Why would Hammer do that? But you know, I guess someone's got to do it. They did On the Buses, so 1971 On the Buses, of course followed by Mutiny on the Buses and Holiday on the Buses. Good old Reg Varney and you know, Hugh Butler and all that. They were good films, actually. The On the Buses films were quite similar to the On the Buses series. A lot of fun, quite fun to watch, still quite good. I can't really fault them. I enjoyed them, man. They're alright. They're alright. And now we move on to Love Thy Neighbour from 1973. So, yeah, Love Thy Neighbour, in terms of sort of political correctness and stuff, has not aged very well. I still quite enjoy it because, you know, it is what it is. You can erase things from history and pretend they didn't happen, or you can just kind of watch it and just know what you're watching, be aware of what you're watching. And I think that makes it slightly easier. I don't know. I still love Till Death Us Do Part and Steptoe and Son and all that stuff, so I'm not the person to ask, probably. But the film, Love Thy Neighbour, I really quite enjoyed it. It was bloody silly. It's a bit like a carry-on film in many ways, and a bit like Bless This House and that kind of thing. The characters, of course, all hate each other, and they have to kind of line up and join forces to do something. I think this one is stopping their parents from marrying each other. The two antagonists. I think that was what the storyline for this film was. It was quite good. It's quite fun. Why not? You know. And from 1974, we had Man About the House. So, yeah, the film of Man About the House. Obviously, Man About the House, George and Mildred, Robin's Nest, all that stuff. Yeah, that, you know, I quite enjoyed it again. It's quite a good film in many ways. It's just an extra long version of an episode of Man About the House, really. Yeah. I'm not sure if Hammer made the Till Death Us Do Part or the Steptoe and Son films. I don't think they did. I think that was someone else. But yeah, they kind of put their hand into all of this. And then when you got to 1979, they put out the Lady Vanishes, and starring Sybil Shepherd. It's worth watching just for Sybil Shepherd if you happen to be a fan of Sybil Shepherd. But yeah, it's not a bad film, really. I watched it recently for the first time ever. I quite enjoyed it. Yeah, it was alright. Bit of a kind of flat, bit of a flat finish to Hammer's, you know, industry though. I think this was the last Hammer film, a bit of a kind of fizzling way of going out. But yeah, I don't know. They came back in the, I think it was the late 90s, 2000s. They came back and they made The Woman in Black, and they made a few other films. They made a remake of Let the Right One In, and I haven't really watched any of them, to be honest. They're on. I have them all. You know, I have them all ready to go, ready to watch at some point. I just haven't gotten around to it because I don't know if I can be asked. One day I'm sure I will get round to it and I'll watch them, and they'll probably be alright. Other than that, of course, you have the Hammer House of Horror, which is a fantastic TV series. Just brilliant. I mean, this started as Hammer kind of ended, and there was also Hammer House of Mystery and Suspense. They're both very similar series, really. Hour and a bit episodes normally, I think. Basically, it's like short films, short Hammer horror films. If you run out and you need your fix of more Hammer horror, you've got those two series, and they're definitely worth watching. There's some brilliant episodes. There's one about a doppelganger, which is just fantastic. And the dream of the man keeps trying to run off with his secretary in the dream and murder his wife. That one, definitely watch that one. So they're all the first few episodes, I think. I can't remember what the episodes are called, but it's just great. It's fantastic stuff. Definitely watch that. Okay, so thanks for watching. That was our top 10 Hammer horror favourites, and some other mentions on the side. I hope this video didn't go on too long. It probably did. But anyway, if you enjoyed this video, then please like and subscribe and all that stuff. And if you fancy buying us a coffee or a glass of wine or whatever, there is a donate button up there under the description of the channel. A PayPal thing. You can go and chuck some money into PayPal and buy us all a drink or whatever. Totally up to you. Do it anyway. So yeah, this has been us signing out.
Die if you want to, you innocent